I'm Kim Starveld and I'm a PhD candidate at the VU and learn at the Department of Clinical Child and Family Studies. And together with my colleagues, I'm working on a project that's called Bekijk. And for the non-Dutch speakers here, I don't expect you to know what this means because it's a Dutch acronym and it means something like looking at. Because in this project, we want teachers to be able to look in new ways at their students and primary school teachers specifically. And I want to start with telling you a bit more about this picture, because what you see here, it's a really happy picture. A teacher reading to her classroom, but not for all teachers. This is such a happy moment, especially not for Desiree and Lucas, who participated in our study. Desiree is the teacher and there the boy in red is Lucas. While Desiree is reading, all the children are joining her, but Lucas, he's fidgeting. He really wants to say something, but the teacher won't let him. He has his hand put up, but he just can't wait and shouts the answer to the classroom. Yeah, and for the children, it's really hard, this kind of behavior. It doesn't help them focus. And for Desiree, it's also hard. She wants to do the activity with the kids, but she also wants to support the needs of Lucas. And this kind of struggle, more teachers experience. They experience mainly problems with children who are rebellious or don't follow instructions well. So that was where my project comes in play. We want to support the behavioral regulation of children by strengthening the relationship with their own teacher. And for this, we adapted an existing intervention for parents and caregivers in a center-based childcare. And today, I will first give you a bit more of theoretical background. What was the reason we started this project? Then I will talk a bit more about the original intervention, which we adapted for use in schools. And that's very exciting because Jana will also be talking about the same intervention today. So you'll hear more about that later. But the biggest point of my presentation is the execution, our pilot study we did to adapt the original intervention to the school context and our ongoing randomized controlled trial. So we heard from teachers throughout the Netherlands that they mainly struggled with children with externalizing behavioral problems. And then we took a look at the database at current effective interventions in the Netherlands focused at reducing behavioral problems in students. And what we saw is that all those evidence-based interventions either focused on one specific child and take him or her out of the classroom for a separate trajectory, or they are preventive and focus on the whole classroom. And being trained in clinical child and family studies, I felt like something was missing here. And I'll tell you why. Because we know from the attachment theory that relationships play a large part in the behavioral regulation of children. At first, the primary caregiver, the parents, builds a strong bond with children. But when children grow older, like 4 years, another important adult comes in their life, the teacher. And what we know from longitudinal studies is that positive teacher-child relationships are associated with different positive child outcomes. And that it's specifically the capacity of the teacher to sensitively respond to the needs of children that predicts those positive interactions between them. So what I'm getting at with this is that we think that next to the current effective interventions focused at the individual child or the classroom as a whole, an intervention focused on the teacher-child relationship and then specifically the sensitivity of the teacher could also be effective in reducing behavioral problems of students. And what's important is that we already did know of an effective attachment-based intervention that helps parents and caregivers in center-based childcare dealing with children with behavioral problems by helping them respond more sensitive to the children. And this intervention is called the video feedback intervention to promote positive parenting and sensitive discipline. And we thought, well, maybe this intervention could also be suitable for supporting teachers. In short, I will be calling this intervention the VIPPSD. And in the following slides, I will present to you a bit how this intervention looks like so that later on I can explain in more detail what we changed to make it more suitable for schools. So as you can see here, VIPPSD consists of 7 biweekly visits of 19 minutes. And there the intervener comes to the home of the parent-child, or in our case, the school, and has a bag full of toys with her or him. And those toys are used for interaction tasks. Those interaction tasks are done by the caregiver and the child, and they are filmed by the intervener. After filming, the intervener and the caregiver sit down to look back at those videos. So the interaction tests that are filmed try to evoke sensitive reactions of the caregiver to differing needs of the child. And the task, for example, is building a tower, or reading a book together, or making some puzzles together. And this takes about 20 minutes. And after that, the intervener sits down with the caregiver to talk through the videos of the last session. And then the intervener really gives feedback on positive interactions happening, behaviors of the child, and sensitive disciplining strategies. And especially those sensitive disciplining strategies are really important because we are focusing ourselves on children with behavioral problems. The beautiful thing about video is that you can pause it. This helps the caregiver to really reflect on situations and see small signals of children better you would otherwise miss. Each visit has its own themes, but they are always focused on sensitivity and sensitive discipline. So that's in short the VIPP-SD intervention. But I would like to emphasize that adapting this intervention for the school context wasn't just duplicating the original intervention. As I said earlier, we did a pilot study. And in this pilot study participated 3 teacher-student dyads, 2 boys from kindergarten, and a girl from grade 3. But then we started with a start meeting with 3 trained VIPP-SD interveners, and we talked through the protocol and make some changes already about the materials and the test use. Then the teacher-student dyads participated in 6 visits of VIPP school. As you can see here, that's 1 visit less than the original VIPP-SD. And that's because in the original VIPP-SD, 1 visit is focused on mealtime. But in schools, mealtime isn't a big moment where the teacher and child interact with each other. So we chose to leave this one out. And afterwards, we had an evaluation meeting with each individual teacher and their intervener. Now I would like to share with you some of the biggest feedback points we got from this pilot study. And I will do this by showing you some quotes of the teachers and the interveners. And the first thing we saw was that teachers have way less time available to participate in an intervention like this. As you can see from this quote from the teacher. And it only seems like, say, just 15 minutes and playing with the little boy the student is, but everything around that. With reviewing, you will need someone, the teacher, for quite a few hours. So it's not quite a few hours that we need a teacher, but we need a teacher for at least 90 minutes. And that's quite some time. And that made us realize we had to make really individualized trajectories and communicate with the teacher what is a good time to be doing the intervention. And that was during times when another teacher could take over the class or an intern could take over the class, but also when they had a PE lesson or after school or during a break, we had to be really creative in this. What we also saw is that teachers have more knowledge about general child development and interaction processes. And what's important to note is that in VIPP school, we have some feedback and tips not directly related to the videos, and we have feedback and tips directly related to what you see in the videos. Well, what we saw was that the feedback that was not directly related to the videos was way too basic for the teachers, as you can see in this quote from an intervener. Nearly all the general tips I give during the intervention, she, the teacher, has already been using in the videos, or she indicates that she has been using them in class in general, and therefore she does not really have something to work with, in my opinion. So we took this advice and we rewrote some of the feedback points, and we focused it more on children with special needs and classroom processes to make it fit in more with the needs of the teachers. And as I said, we also had feedback that was directly related to the videos, and another intervener said about that the teacher learned most from watching the footage and the feedback related to this. We The teachers told us that the task and materials did not always relate to the school test, and that they would really prefer if they did, because then they could generalize the things they learned easier to the classroom. So we made some changes in the task and the materials. And then the transfer to the classroom, teachers really struggled generalizing what they learned outside of the classroom in the one-on-one situations with students to the classroom, where there are all these other children present and all these distractions. And this is what the teacher said about that. I look at the student in a different way than I usually would, but I am missing a piece in the intervention, the behavior in class. I do see changes in him in class, but the issue is in class is still quite present. And that, the generalization to the class context, is something I find I would like to get more into. So originally, we filmed all the interaction tests outside of the classroom, but we chose to film the last interaction tests inside the classroom with the distractions of the other students, and to help the teacher to be able to generalize their newly learned skills back into the classroom. And the last visit, we really focused on how you use these skills when you also need to look out for other students. Teachers also saw some effects of the VIPP school. One teacher was really happy that she got the chance to participate. And she said about this, if I had not done this, I would have not gone this far with him, the student. And that's why I think it's useful for other teachers to do it. At first, the boy with whom she participated did not even look at her, but at the end of the trajectory, they were really having conversations. All teachers saw that the use of video was a great means to become more aware of the small signals of the child you would otherwise miss, or the behaviors, often subconscious behavior of the teachers themselves. One teacher put this in really nice words. You become more aware of your own behavior, that you start thinking, oh, that's useful. You just do it subconsciously. And also, I think that sometimes there are signals from a student you would otherwise miss. Because when you are part of it, I don't think you see it as consciously as you do now on video. The teachers experienced a more positive relationship with the student after participating, and they said that they could more easily correct their student in the classroom. Often a look was enough for a student to change behavior. So this was quite positive feedback, and that made us start a randomized controlled trial to see if this intervention is really effective. And for that, we randomly assign teacher and student diets to either the intervention group, where they get 6 bi-weekly VIPP school visits, or the control group, where they get a dummy intervention. And this dummy intervention consists of 6 bi-weekly online calls with a master student, where they just talk through the general development of the child. And we hypothesize that VIPP school will be most effective in producing positive student and teacher outcomes. So the participating teacher-student dyads first participated in a pretest, then they followed one of the 2 interventions, VIPP school or a dummy intervention, then they participated in a post-test and ended with a follow-up. And during those measurement periods, we were really interested in the variables you can see here on the left, mostly in teacher sensitivity and teacher sensitive discipline. Those variables we measure with an observation where the teacher and child do an interaction test. And this observation we later code with a revised Erickson 7-point rating scale. As you can also see, we asked the child and the teacher to fill out some questionnaires that are related to behavioral problems of the child, teacher-child relationship, attitudes towards school, and teacher self-efficacy. And all the way down under, you can see the classroom climate variable, because we are also really interested in what happens when you enhance the teacher-child relationship. Does this have an influence on the whole classroom? And for this—
1 minute left, Kim.
Yes, I'm finishing up.
Right.
And for this, we use the child caregiver interaction scale. And this is an adapted version. We adapted it together with its author. And I could go on about this, but for the sake of time, I'll keep it at this, because I want to end with Desiree and Lucas. Where are they now after finishing the VIPP school trajectory? Desiree says she understands better what motivates the behavior of Lucas and that this enables her to react more adequate to Lucas's behavior. Lucas can work longer on tasks than before and thus interrupt Desiree often before, and he has some so-called bad days, but Desiree is more patient with him these days. And that was my presentation, and I hope that you take home from this that the teacher-child relationship may play a big role in supporting teachers in dealing with children with behavioral problems, and that we expect that VIPP school supports teachers in supporting these children. And our results are expected medio 2024 of a randomized controlled trial. So maybe I can tell you more about that then. Thank you for your attention. I'm looking forward to your questions.